Yeah, with that being the, oh, for the love of God, chainsaw, no.
Oh, I was going to say I can't hear it, but I can just hear it.
Oh, God. I can't with this right now. Okay, we can keep talking, but we can't say anything extraneously witty, or otherwise the internet won't have it. All right, so,
But extraneous wit is my favourite kind.
Hi, I'm Emmy.
And I'm James. Or am I?
We're not sure, because welcome back to the Bestiary Monster Manual A to Z. And James, what is the cause of our confusion today?
Well, it's another entity, creature drawn from Northern European folklore. Originally a Germanic word, it's the Doppelganger.
It really does sound very German, too, the Doppelganger. Yes, this guy is a mysterious shape changer and changeling who infiltrates societies. And, you know, he's got a lot of holes in the lore here in this book, and I know that's something we find a little bit fascinating here.
Yeah, I think that's probably deliberate. I think on the one hand it's reflective of, in the myths and the folklore that inspiration is drawn from here. The whole point is their origins, their intentions, their methods, very mysterious and unknown, and you're not given a whole lot on what these guy's deal is. And on the other, I think it allows for a lot of creativity and for the DM or whoever is character building around these guys to get a lot of freedom out of it.
I completely agree. These guys are NPC fodder to the letter. These guys are absolutely designed to infiltrate the societies that your party is in, maybe even into the party itself. There is just a really large, endless set of thoughts that I have about where you could go with this guy. He's not really designed for combat. He's a challenge rating 3, and I mean, he's got a multi-attack, and it's kind of intimidating that just him walking around without any weapons is a challenge rating 3, that he's already got multi-attack and things like that. But I think that he's ultimately moldable in a very literal sense.
Yeah, I mean, fighting is not going to be the first choice for these creatures, and moldable is the word. Even just looking at the art, they are very much a blank slate.
Even the way that they're drawn here, they have that unfinished clay sculpture look about them. There's, on the arms here, everything kind of folds down. You can almost see the marks of the hands that sculpt them. They look humanoid in only the most basicest of senses.
Almost featureless, in fact. Aside from that basic musculature that you can see, there's not really any identifying features. They look essentially like, as you say, a clay model based on like a book of anatomy. A thing that I like, actually, and a notable, very minor feature, for creatures that base their entire identity off essentially adopting the forms of other creatures, they have no visible mouth of their own, no voice of their own.
Yes, I had noticed that immediately myself as well, and I had that almost body horror moment of imagining that when it does take a shape, its mouth kind of splits open into that face, and it kind of gave me the heebies. But yes, they entirely take personalities from other people, so they don't have a language, they don't have a real need to speak in this form. It's not something that they usually stick around in very long. It's a very metaphorical and literal description of who they are.
And, using their sort of telepathic abilities to read others' thoughts, using that to help sort of flesh out these identities that they have stolen, adopted. Their neutral nature means that they are, and again, it's kind of down to the DM to determine this, but as they're presented in the Monster Manual, very selfish. Their sort of modus operandi is to adopt the personality of, or rather the identity of somebody who perhaps, conveniently disappears or, faces a sudden death, and they're just able to sort of step into the hole that they leave in other people's lives and live that person's life. Perhaps taking all the money of a wealthy merchant or using the contacts of a well-connected politician.
They strike me as almost the ultimate parasite, that they don't really take any particular violent action necessarily, although it is implied that some doppelgangers do have a more violent nature, which again goes into the idea that this particular entry is really a suggestion. It's really something that you could build off of if you're building one of these guys for your campaign. But that they aren't usually murderers or killers. They more just infiltrators. So
certainly able to defend themselves, though.
Oh, absolutely. Again, that going back to that multi-attack, they can absolutely hit you hard with just their hands, and they start off again at a 3 without a weapon. So if, for example, you wanted to build a doppelganger who maybe has been around for a while and maybe has some classes in fighter, you could do that, and that would be a little bit scary. Or make one, I know for me, I'm imagining making one a sorcerer or any charisma-based class. Giving it spell casting would just be a nightmare. You do have options with where you could take this guy, and you could absolutely have a formidable time with him in combat if you wanted to.
Yeah, and again, kind of it is their essence that they are a template. They are something that you can build something from, and even without any added abilities or levels, they come with that ambusher and surprise attack pair of features, which together giving them advantage. And if it's a successful attack in a surprise round, that's a bunch of extra damage.
Yes.
They're not fighters by choice, but if you find that you've cornered one and it has no other option,
it will defend itself, at the very least long enough to get itself to run away. That is another thing that it's very, very good at. It's just simply getting away from you. Because it can read thoughts of people around it, the chances of you sneaking up on somebody that you suspect might be a doppelganger, not high. It's going to know you're coming. It's going to get out of there. They're opportunistic. They're not necessarily there to get into a big squabble with you. So if they're coming at you punching, they might be doing it just long enough to get out the back door.
Yeah. A thing I really like, actually, for a monster based on such, old folklore and legend and myth, is how much a creative DM could use these to tap into our modern zeitgeist. The kind of questions and themes that very much are dominant in our modern discourse and in fiction. And those are questions of identity. Who are we in terms that we present ourselves to the real world through social media, for one set of friends versus family, etc. Like, they've got a lot of potential to bring not just a bit of mystery and intrigue, but some almost real deep questions to a game. Like, who are we really?
I completely agree. I mean, looking at it from that perspective and looking down, one of the last things that it describes in the monster manual is that these are rooted in the old legend of changelings, that doppelgangers do not raise their own children. Doppelgangers are typically born usually between an unbeknownst liaison between a humanoid and a doppelganger, and that the doppelganger child does not know they are a doppelganger until they are older. And so there's that idea of self-discovery, of finding out that you are not what you thought you were your entire life, and that you've been presented as something completely different. They don't necessarily have a society of their own or culture of their own, or even motivations as a people. The chances of you even maybe have two doppelgangers even having really met is not even insanely high. So I imagine there's a lot of potential for the stories you could tell about discovering somebody going through that process. Maybe discovering a doppelganger who is learning who they are. Maybe, again, with that neutral alignment being the base, you could find someone who's maybe trying to do some good, maybe somebody who's trying to do some evil. There's so many levels that you could really dig into with a doppelganger involved in your story.
Yep, a real tabula rasa, and with that, a lot of potential. Thank you so much again for joining us here at the Bestiary this week. If you'd like to leave us a comment on your thoughts on the doppelganger, is it truly you leaving that comment, or is it some kind of persona that you choose to project to the world? Is it a doppelganger you choose to inhabit? If you'd like a simpler thing to do, of course, you can hit the bell to be notified of when we release new content. You can subscribe to become a member of the pack. We'd love to have you. And obviously, we would also love it if you considered supporting us through our Patreon, a link to which will be in the description for your perusal. Please join us again next week when we look at the scary, terrifying, undead creature, the Dracolich. And in the meantime, you can see some more of our videos here.